All right, welcome back to the Modcast. This is episode 3. We don't know what we're calling it yet. I'm Gabe Anderson,
I'm Jake Overall.
and yeah, let's get into it.
This is the Modcast.
Yeah, we had a couple of different conversations before we started here, trying to figure out what to talk about today. I know we said you had written down what types of mods as an episode name, but then we kind of got into more. Maybe it's the past, present, and potentially future of historical modifiers, people that have really pushed the innovations of their respective industries through the modification of it, making it better was the whole point.
Yep, they started with something, they saw a problem with it, and then they decided to take action, and despite all people saying, no, you can't do that, or that's too expensive, they went for it, and some of the greatest innovations ever have come out of it.
Yeah. We had, so I don't remember if it was the first or the second episode, but you had mentioned Howard Hughes. He was the portion of aviation. We kind of flew over that topic.
We did. Nice pun. We flew over it mostly because I kind of just referenced movies, but this guy, he didn't like the fact that the planes couldn't carry a substantial engine. He decided that the top wing, because there were biplanes at the time, wasn't necessary, and his biggest gripe was that the frame and outer shell of the plane was both too heavy and it had too much drag. So his solution to his engineers and mechanics was, give me flat surfaced rivets on the outside of the plane. It should be smooth from stem to stern. And because of that, he actually got himself a airspeed record.
Was it, 352 mile an hour in 1935, right?
Pre-World War II, 352 miles an hour.
That is insane. I didn't realize that, and I like going fast. I thought I would have known something like that.
He actually, he ran the plane out of fuel to get that speed on the last run, and then he crashed it because he was the one who flew it himself. It wasn't like his plane, his record. Like, he flew the plane.
His plane, his driving, his record. That's what I
Precisely.
respect right there.
He busted up his ankle, he hobbled home, and told his wife the good news.
He won. He was the fastest man alive at that point in time. That's insane.
So we mentioned that there are different types of modifications out there. The sort of relation we can see here is that Howard Hughes developed in aerospace technology, so to speak, in airplanes. Well, we have a modern person who does a lot of modification to existing technology, and that's Elon Musk.
He owns a ton of different stuff. Obviously, everybody knows him for Tesla. He was the innovator of stuff like PayPal, which was another modify. That's a whole... We'll talk about that later. That's a different episode. SpaceX is his big one, though.
SpaceX and Starlink. He utilizes SpaceX to deliver his Starlink satellites. One of his Falcon 9 rockets is capable of carrying 55 Starlink satellites to orbit. Which is pretty insane. And that being said, this rocket isn't one-time use. It's reusable. They've actually had over 100 successful launch and landings of these rockets.
Which is, I knew nothing of this. I'm just as, if anybody is blown away by this, I'm just as blown away as anybody else is. I am just learning about all this stuff from him. And we were actually looking at some of the stuff on the website and whatnot. Like some different pictures of the actual ship itself, that one there, which is, first off, thing's breathtaking. You were talking about some of the other features of it, but...
So as we look at it here, you can see the upper piece is like a traditional rocket. It almost looks like a warhead on a missile.
Yeah.
Giant missile. It's got these fins in the middle, and this whole lower section is the main booster engine, which is, as it says here, reusable. So there are 31 rockets, if I'm understanding correctly, at the base of this engine that they have here. And they've just recently done some test firings. But he tweeted about it just yesterday, I believe, being a week at the time that this is released, saying that they're going to be attempting a orbital test launch of this vehicle here soon, in his words. So how soon that is, I don't know.
So one of the other innovations we were talking about, so Howard Hughes was able to achieve his speeds by making the vehicle more aerodynamic, having the flat rivets and whatnot. You were talking about the fact that they're making this out of, or trying to make it out of one piece of stainless with one weld on the whole piece.
Yeah. Last I knew, I had seen, I think it maybe was a couple years ago, he had mentioned it at its debut when he showed the prototype model that was its multiple panels stitched together to make this shape. But it gives you a general idea of what he's trying to accomplish. He said in that debut speech that he was looking to roll this out of a piece of sheet steel and weld a single seam down it. Some of the difficulties is that there needs to be varying thicknesses along the outside of the body of this vehicle, given the immense pressures and heat and just the general difficulty of leaving the Earth's surface in general.
I can't even imagine what it would take to be able to make something like that. I mean, good for him, for the people he's hiring, trying to figure that out, I guess.
Absolutely. A lot of really highly qualified people.
More qualified than me, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably. I mean, just a couple of knuckleheads, but, you know.
But yeah, so Howard Hughes being one of our past innovators, one of our past modifiers, Elon Musk now in the aerospace world, you know, once again pushing the boundaries of everything. It's something very interesting to look at and just see the different innovations and how, I mean, to a degree, they're, you know, varying aspects of it. I'm using this very loosely, but they both were going for the same thing. They're trying to make their flying vehicle, I guess you could say, as streamlined, as fast as possible, and work as optimally as it can.
Ideally, yeah. And there's been other innovators in various industries and things that we've seen. I mean, you and your family with their business, we've seen the evolution of you know, sewing machines, for instance, over time, and the other things that those companies made. Like, I think it was, the White Sewing Machine Company?
Yeah, we actually own a truck that was, I mean, it's not the White Sewing Machine Company's automotive plant, but it's a branch off of the same company, White. They also produce trucks. And it all started with the White Sewing Machine Company.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the same idea as Yamaha building the engine for the LFA as like an instrument.
Yeah. Or, I mean, another very seldom known fact is when the U.S. military was looking to, I believe it was World War II. Don't quote me on that 100%. One of the wars we were in. They were looking to put a new sidearm on everybody, new handgun. And they went around to all of the different manufacturers that could potentially create something like that, and the Singer Sewing Machine Company was actually one of the companies chosen to try and retool and produce handguns. And the Singer 1911 was actually such a high quality gun, they chose not to have Singer produce the firearm because it was so good. They knew they could use their tooling in higher, more complex things other than just a handgun. So Singer actually ended up producing, I don't know what it was exactly, but very, very highly machined, high quality things. And it all started from sewing machines, the modification of, you know, making people go from sewing by hand to sewing by machine.
That's crazy. And now we have fully automated machines that do it.
Yeah, just for you. You know, press a couple of buttons and there it is for you. It's pretty interesting.
Absolutely. Speaking of pressing a couple of buttons and having things do things for you, this guy here is basically just a really smart guy who likes to use his knowledge and time to make new stuff, and his name is Rob Dahm.
Yeah, it's the four-rotor all-wheel drive RX-7. I can tell you, I got a chance to see this actually at an event we go to called Grid Life last year, and that is one of the most insane vehicles I've ever seen. Like, just listening to it and watching it, fantastic.
Well, I'm sure there's some people out there that heard you say four-rotor,
Yep.
And what that means is this engine that you can kind of see here is basically like Legos, isn't it?
Yeah, it's literally, it's as long as your crankshaft is long enough to connect all the pieces, you can stack unlimited numbers of rotors onto it. So it's the rotary engine, which is the spinning triangle for, well, like, I don't know who, I guess. It's spinning triangle. But yeah, there's people, I know of at least the four rotors. I don't know if anybody's stacked any taller than this yet. But the nice thing about rotaries is the rotational mass of the engine allows it to spin incredibly quick and very high. So when you stack a bunch together, they also sound great.
Of course. So you can actually see in this one that I've highlighted here, him working on one.
There you go.
So it's an oval shape on the inside with, like you said, like a triangle or like an oblong triangle that rotates, and it basically utilizes space between that triangle and the edges of this oval to carry out the combustion cycle. And the flow through the engine is much, much faster, which, like you said, less rotational mass. It can spin faster.
Yeah, the rotor itself does all of the control of the combustion cycle. So there's what's referred to as your apex seal on the very tip of each one of your of the points of the triangle, and that is actually acts not only as like the quote unquote piston ring, but it also separates the intake and exhaust ports as the Dorito or the triangle is spinning. So there's also no valves in the engine either, which is which less rotational mass, which means it can spin quicker. There's less stuff flying around in there. So
if you can make it reliable, which I believe there is a company out there, I think they're called Liquid Piston, that's working on attempting to make a very reliable rotary, and Mazda is bringing the rotary back.
They are.
So they might have figured something out. Those apex seals are a big fail point in these engines, but if
they are,
if they found a way around that, I mean, that'll be fascinating to see. And Rob Dahm here is attempting to stuff rotary into a old Indy car,
which I can't wait to see that.
As you can see, the pushing the buttons and having things do things for you. This is his CNC machine in his garage that he makes his own parts with.
That's a dream. One day we'll get something like that.
That would be really cool.
I know another guy that's got something like that, though.
Okay.
He is Two Stroke Stuffing is his name on YouTube. I gotta be honest, I don't know what the guy's name is. I watch him often, but not very often. But his big thing is he builds two-strokes, and he is a absolute two-stroke wizard. I mean, watching this guy's videos and explaining stuff to him, if you have any questions about two-stroke, I promise you this guy has a way to answer it. And he actually machines and mills most of his own parts in his own shop right next to the desk that he records at. It's the technology behind what he does. Like, for example, actually, the engine that he's spotlighting across all of the top rows there, the cylinder on that engine is actually 3D printed of his own design.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
The guy's no joke. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, is this a Rotrex supercharger? Is
Yep.
that what I'm looking at here?
On his two-stroke. I don't know what configuration the engine is at this point, but I know at one point in time it was like a twin rotary valve exhaust valve two-stroke that was also supercharged on an underdriven pulley. Actually, I think there you go. What if you supercharged that engine right there? And I mean, it's just insane to watch. Absolutely great guy to watch. Highly recommend.
That looks really cool. I've watched a couple of these videos. I think I've watched the Say No to Low RPM dry clutch video. The guy's a genius. I'll give him that much credit because I think it's well earned.
Absolutely. I'd love to meet him someday. Hopefully we can.
So on the topic of IndyCar and innovators that we have, now and innovators of the past, Formula One is kind of like IndyCar. IndyCar has actually stayed true to the internal combustion engine, which I have a lot of respect for. Shout out to Chevy and Honda for taking part in that as well.
Absolutely.
I'm not really sure how Honda fits in being in F1 and IndyCar, but I guess if there's exposure to show that they can do both, that's probably pretty good for them. So they're doing a lot of innovating in that space, but Haas F1 team is not a Honda-powered team. They're a Ferrari-powered team. And this year, they have made some changes aerodynamically to this car. They have moved the front side pod inlets further back in order to basically maximize the distance between the front wheels and that point in order to get the coolest air possible and have it flow the smoothest. So it's almost like it's flowing over a flat surface.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting. They also moved the underflow Venturi inlets farther back so that they can maximize the feed of air to the floor.
So it is the theory behind this is they're trying to get the vents back into clean air. They don't want them in the dirty air from the parts moving in front of them.
Right. They're sort of protected by, I guess you could say, like the aerodynamics of the wheels and the front wing.
Okay, yep, because it's going to, obviously the air hits the wheel and then it dirties behind it. There's an unclean air source So then the air comes back together, is flowing smooth again. That's where the vents are going.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Red Bull was actually like one of the first ones to implement this, and it looks like you're going to see that across the sport. I'd be interested to see if IndyCar is going to take a same sort of approach, if that's going to help their model of racing too. I think that would be neat to explore because they're a little bit different. They have like a similar cockpit to a Formula One car, but theirs is entirely closed. They've got a windscreen in front of them versus the Formula One cockpit, which is open.
Is just the halo, correct?
Right, they have the halo.
Yep.
Which has saved a lot of drivers.
I would say, thank God.
Thank God for the halo. People didn't like it at first, but I think it's a good innovation, and honestly, it doesn't seem to affect performance at all. Some of the fastest times ever set on F1 tracks were in the halo era.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I'd be willing to keep the skinny pedal a little closer to the floor if I knew I'm not going to die if I hit a wall.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah, go faster if you're safer. What do
Yeah.
you got? You don't have as much to lose there.
The whole point of pushing the limits is to push it, but you also want to be able to live to do it another day.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So from there, talk about some other modern innovators in a totally different realm. This is sort of like the military type round.
yes, this is How and How Tech. Now, I don't know exactly how far out this was broadcast across the country, but they had a TV show for at least a couple of seasons, How and How Tech. And they build the Ripsaw tank, which I believe there's a couple of... I know, like, at least Cletus McFarland has at least done video with them. I don't know if he owns one necessarily, but at one point in time, I know it was at least the world's fastest tank. I mean, the thing hauls. They're great.
So it's not an armored tank. It's more of a personnel carrier, right?
Yeah, they actually... So some of their stuff has actually been sold military-wise. I don't know what the actual exact thing is for it, but I know they're focusing on doing a lot of like bomb robot tech.
Okay.
So they can and also firefighting with the robots versus sending people in as well.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I haven't been up on this company in a couple of years, but I do know they're local in Maine. So it's just an interesting thing. They're cool products.
So speaking of local people, there was a couple of brothers who grew up in New England, specifically New Hampshire, and they moved out to California and started a little company called McDonald's.
Yeah. I'm behind on time, so I haven't seen this documentary yet. But
So it's just a movie, but
I'm sorry, I meant movie. Yeah.
it kind of it's like a dramatic documentary. Basically, it gives you the idea of what happened. But essentially, the part of it that I want to talk about is the fact that these two brothers went to California, and through a bunch of different ventures that they arrived at creating a burger, shake, and fry stand because they realized that they had a restaurant previous that had a very diverse menu. There was a lot of things on it. They did the bellhop thing where they would run people to your car, so you'd park in the parking lot, and then someone would come take your order. They'd go get your stuff, and then they'd bring it back. Most of the time it was wrong. The food wasn't fresh anymore because it took so long to get back. So they basically were like, these three things on our menu are selling the most, and we're going to get rid of the bellhop service. So they focused on absolute quality and efficiency of creating the ideal burger, the most consistent burger, fries, and milkshakes ready within about 30 seconds of ordering time.
Which is, that's remarkable. It's not that fast anymore, that's for sure. But it was done through the modification of how the restaurant worked itself.
Correct. So not unlike Ford, which we talked about joining F1, but at the origination, why Ford is so special in our world is because Henry Ford created the assembly line.
Yeah, you did your one to however many couple of tasks on the vehicle in front of you, and then you went to the one behind it and did the exact same thing all day long. That was your only job.
Yep, and a lot of people made a good living, and
absolutely.
They had benefits and stuff like that out of this model. And so McDonald's, the two McDonald brothers, got together and they made an assembly line for burgers, fries, and milkshakes.
Now, when they went to design this, they brought all of their employees to a tennis court, you were saying?
Yep, they brought chalk, they went to a tennis court, they drew it on the ground, and then they reenacted a work day with their employees.
That's insane. So now we didn't talk earlier. The significance of the tennis court was the approximate size of the building, I'm assuming?
Yep. So basically, one half of the tennis court is about the size of the kitchen.
Okay. Okay,
So
fair enough.
They were able to orient everything in that half of the tennis court and make changes as needed because they would just erase the lines and draw new ones in a different color.
Until they had the optimal, perfect, fastest flowing restaurant there was.
Absolutely.
The invention of fast food.
They would regularly walk around the store with a stopwatch in hand, and they would see how long it was taking for the burgers to get out, how long it was taking for the fries to be cooked, because they were down to within about 10 seconds that they wanted these fries to be cooked a certain amount because they thought that was the best quality and it would also provide the best service.
That's absolutely insane to think.
It's a little sad what happened to them on the other end of it. They got big businessed out of their own product, but what they did revolutionized the food industry forever, and you can't really go anywhere without there being a McDonald's or, Burger King, Wendy's, name your fast food joint. They're all pretty much the same.
It's the same concept. It's how fast can we get the food out to the customer?
Absolutely. So, modifying the space around you, modifying your vehicles, modifying aerospace technology. I'm sure there's, people in the health field that have to make modifications, at least people who are studying the engineering of all.
I mean, we can just talk medical for a second real quick. I mean, think about it. Your knee goes bad, they put a new knee in. You're modifying yourself.
Yeah, people are being modified. Musk, again, is, he has a company called Neuralink where they're doing a lot of research into fixing debilitating injuries like spinal cord issues and even people who are blind, maybe. They're trying to interface technology with humans, which, I mean, I guess as technology evolves, that's probably something that was on the horizon anyway. It's just a little weird to think that we're living in the time where it's actually being studied and tested and put through to see if it's viable.
I mean, 20 years ago, think about it. None of this was even thought of yet. All of a sudden, here it is.
Well, we've got to the point where we even have GMO or non-GMO on the back of food packaging in America because we're concerned about modifying the genes of food that we're eating.
Yep, literally it's in the name, genetically modified organism.
Absolutely. So modification is everywhere and it's constant all the time, and that's basically what people do in general.
Yeah. Turned interesting.
So at this point, I think we've pretty much covered all we wanted to look at. I mean, the Falcon 9 rocket is a little bit different than the rocket that they are currently building to send the Starship into orbit. I should mention that Elon Musk also owns Tesla, which is an electric car which modifies the way that people travel.
Yes. You were telling me about the thrust angle of the rockets. I forget which one. Was that the Falcon 9 or the...
So this one, the Falcon 9, utilizes hydraulic pressure to move these fins that you see here near the top.
Yep.
The ones that are perpendicular to the cylinder. So those are hydraulically driven. The one on the Starship, you can see kind of here where the color changes to the other cylinder. The ones they're mounted completely perpendicular, and those ones actually don't move. The ones on the smaller rocket fold down. These ones do not. Okay. They are 3 tons apiece, and they are servoed or rotated using Tesla vehicle motors.
Huh. Do they say out of which model?
I'm not sure which model.
Oh man, I would love to know. But I don't know if there's a difference between them, to be honest. But
so I guess you could say that once they start launching these on a regular basis, that Teslas are going to space pretty much all the time.
Yeah, even though there's already one there.
Elon Musk is a weird dude.
Oh,
that's okay.
I appreciate him though. Innovators though, there has to be something off with them, but that's what makes them special and make them do what they do.
Well, that's there's something a little off about both of us too, but. Hey, you know what? If we can make some cool stuff,
why not?
Why not? We're here to we're here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly.
So
life's too short to stay stock, even.
Yes, it is. It's actually the slogan of the podcast. So I think that just about covers everything.
I think that was about all of it. I know it's a little shorter than it normally is, but
that's okay. I'd rather have a shorter, higher quality podcast than a longer one. So
I don't disagree with that. So.
Well,
fair enough.
I'm Jake Overall.
I'm Gabe Anderson.
And that was the Modcast.
Have a good night, everybody.